such Pokemon like this as well. Just like the Regieleki, just as well as Bastiodon actually has made an appearance as well. One of those Pokemon that you do not expect. Regieleki or James Beaker's team. And of course, my favorite from today is the Ho-Oh that I keep having to mention.
Oh, wait, what? What's a Ho-Oh? That's the first I've ever heard of it. Shmon. It's not going to be the last time, trust me. But we're going to have to see how it does. It's just doing so well, right? And that's the most impressive part about it. But we do know that, of course, we've got a lot of action to be had both on the mainstream as well as our current one, but we are currently trying to go ahead and get our next pairing up that we're going to be featuring on the side stream. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to have to be... I believe this is just an incorrect graphic, but what we do have in store is Joji Kaieda versus Masayoshi Kuroo that we are going to be featuring. So, just another smashing set between both of them that we're very much looking forward to.
Yeah, as we have the team sheets here, and who makes an appearance? It's Ditto! It's one of the few Pokemon that we haven't seen yet on stream appear yet. But now, as you said, why stop at 2 restricted? Have a third one as well! So a very fun call by Masayoshi Kuroo, having that Miraidon Calyrex duo as well, having that speed sandwiches. And then having a little bit of that Nikolai sauce there with the Sneasler on top of it as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think Sneasler is such a cool little Pokemon when, you're able to go ahead and absolutely capitalize off of terrains via its Unburden ability, essentially allowing the proc of the seed, whether it's going to be electric or, let's say, grassy seed. In this case, it's going to be electric. You're still going to get the physical defensive boost up, but as well, you've got doubling of your speed. No fake out on it, but it does have a low kick rather than, let's say, a move that it normally goes for, such as close combat, in order to be able to capitalize off of, like you mentioned as well earlier on, Shmon, the average weight of Pokemon in this restricted format because of all of the legendary Pokemon. They're just very, very big chonkers that are so powerful. And Sneasler looking to try to capitalize off of that.
Yeah, exactly. And big chunkers indeed, because look at that. We have Calyrex Ice Rider on both sides. And Calyrex Ice Rider is quite a heavy, bulky Pokemon. So being able to low kick that could prove to be quite effective in that regard. We have seen already Calyrex with Koraidon a few times pop up as a team, which has proven to be quite useful. We see it again as well with the Smeargle with the spiky shield, which I do think is a very good call, trying to adapt to that Smeargle meta as well.
Yeah, and like we've said, it's just so much going for Smeargle. The fact that it can learn each and every move, barring, let's say, Dark Void, for example, or it can't use at least, just goes to show that if you need any sort of hole filled in terms of missing components of your team composition, this is the Pokemon for you. And clearly that's what Joji, as well as other trainers, have identified. This is the second set that we've seen of the Smeargle having the Focus Sash and the Ruination, like you mentioned, Spiky Shield, Spore, and Follow Me. So fascinating to actually see it starting to get popularized around Japanese or Oceania sort of regional communities.
Yeah, exactly. I do think it's just the adaptation to what we've had a lot of bulky Zamazenta that has been like issues for a lot of trainers, and being able to low kick Zamazenta is really good and consistent. Yeah. Even when it goes for a Terra Water, for example, to try and not get hit super effectively by a close combat, you are still getting hit by a 120 base power move with no drawbacks as well, which is just a really solid damage dealer, in all honesty. And like we have seen Landorus already prove to be quite useful as well. It's not like with the speed stats, it's quite interesting as the Calyrex and the Koraidon are the speed sandwiching, where in the middle the bologna is the is the Landorus.
Yeah, well, that's such an artistic way of describing it, John.
I just like food.
I could tell you were describing it. You were making me very hungry earlier as well when you were mentioning it. But yes, I think being able to go ahead and have that speed sandwich is such a cool interaction, and definitely something that really is such a strong, I would say, integral part of the characteristic of having the Calyrex Ice Rider pairing with the Miraidon. You just want to be able to capitalize off of either side of the speed spectrum. But then again, Masayoshi Kuroo, a trainer that is not unfamiliar to great successes, being the 2025 Melbourne Regional Champion, as well as the prior year, actually getting top 32. So a lot going for themselves, but they've got a Joji Kaieda up against them, which is going to be a very, very tough opponent too.
Yeah, that's just gonna be tough to beat at the very least. Like, if you have someone in front of you, I don't think either player would love to see them standing in front of them and that elusive top cut as well. But yeah, we have seen also a quite interesting meta development is that Life Orb Miraidon, because we've seen a lot of Choice Packs in the beginning. Then we saw Assault Vest pop up. We saw Choice Scarf even. We've even seen Cover Cloaks. But now Life Orb seems to be somewhat of a meta call for this Worlds, as you are giving yourself still the option to deal massive amount of damage, but still keep it so that you are able to protect yourself, which might prove to be useful in a lot of cases because we have so many Pokemon with Fake Out. We have this meta where Incineroar, Rillaboom, every one of them is really good, and then on top of that there's a Smeargle as well at times. So Protect might be the way to go in that regard.
Yeah, and that's sort of the nuances that it does bring in terms of the different flows that you would normally expect when it comes to a Smeargle and handling it. You always expect a Fake Out, but in this case, it's more so inviting the Fake Out. Even though it does have Follow Me, it does still have the Spiky Shield, because you can't let a Smeargle run away with momentum, especially within that same turn. The fact that at the end of it, you're going to be potentially getting a Moody Boost, you need to slow it down as much as possible. And clearly that's what Joji's identified, saying, oh, you know what? I want to try to take advantage of that sort of mental game scenario there and try to get them pinned into trying to focus into it. But yeah, it's not the only interesting Pokemon. On Joji's side, we've seen this 6 before. Landorus actually having a really cool spot on this team in particular. There's no rain support in order to be able to guarantee a 100% accurate Sandsear Storm in that weather state, but still having Sandsear Storm is such a fantastic option for spread ground damage.
Yeah, exactly. Like, rain makes it 100% accurate, and let's see how accurate it'll be, because we have the leads here. We have Miraidon and Koraidon on the field. The Sun and the Electric Train are coming up as Rillaboom and the Urshifu are joining them on the side. So Rillaboom immediately, good lead here, trying to make sure that this grass Electric Train gets diminished with its Grass Train, so the power output from this Miraidon has been lessened. And then there's still the Urshifu, which is also threatened by this Rillaboom just as well. So the Rillaboom, a really good lead, I feel, where it supports with Fake Out, and it gives the option for this Koraidon to absolutely let loose and being able to go for a strong move. Now, Masayoshi has been prepared for this, because both Pokemon have Protect. They have access to just wait a turn, see what happens, what the idea is that Joji might be going for in that regard. So in that case, I feel a little bit slowing down by Masayoshi, while Joji is gonna go really hard, real fast with this Koraidon and this Rillaboom lead.
Yeah, and having the Life Orb on the Miraidon allows you to have that Protect, right? And not just get locked into that Fake Out in particular. So we're going to have to see how that does pan out. Joji clearly going on the offensive with the Terra Fire. Koraidon will, of course, be met by... Let's take a bit of a count. First Protect, followed suit by a Detect, rather than a second Protect. But, yeah, that's sort of what we were just talking about now, right, Shimon? Where we've got the defensive play in order to burn the Fake Out turn, as well as see what move and target is actually focused down on here. Seems like the Koraidon is trying to go and most likely get a Flame Charge onto the Urshifu in order to break its Focus Sash.
Yeah, breaking his focus sash is the first thing you want to do because Urshifu is still able to deal a lot of damage. Urshifu, despite the sun being up, despite Surging Strikes not being all that really hitting hard on either of these targets right now. Now, with the Terra Fire, it will hit just that little bit harder right now as we have the Terra coming out from the Miraidon itself, which is Terra Electric. So that means damage is inbound, I feel, as a Volt Switch can absolutely devastate this Koraidon despite their no being trained. It's an Aqua Jet from the Urshifu coming out in that Koraidon as the Miraidon is unleashing all of its power right now into this Electro Drift, into that target, and that is surviving on 1 HP!
1 hit point survival. Koraidon clearly trained so well. Is definitely going to get a sandwich after this. Going for the flame charge into the Urshifu will be able to get that speed boost, break that focus sash, and in combination with the wood hammer, pick up the absolute KO. Urshifu is already down. Turn 2 of this game 1, and because flame charge has been utilized, we saw the Miraidon was faster in this turn, but it's not going to be in the subsequent.
No, exactly. And now with the Urshifu down, the only real option you have to have a faster option than this Koraidon right now is the Incineroar with a potential fake out, making sure that Koraidon is not able to move and will fade to a fake out, while other Pokemon will all just be slower. So this Koraidon is still ready to unleash Fury right now, as it is able to Flare Blitz into any of these 2 targets and absolutely being able to devastate either of them. But now the question is, which one of these will you be able to attack? Because both of them have access to protect, while the other could punish that Koraidon going out of its way to attack.
Yeah, exactly, and that's definitely something you need to be able to factor in right now, because this is sort of the point of where the momentum can truly start switching in advantage of Joji's side, but he's just going to be so cautious with which Pokemon he does want to target. And we're going to be seeing Masayoshi absolutely respect that Koraidon in its spot, go for the Protect there, and for good reason, because Joji did try to target it down, wanted most likely to go for the Flare Blitz, but this will allow an opening of the Volt Switch, picking up the KO straight onto it and allowing Masayoshi to get a pivot motion going and bring in a fresh Pokemon from the back.
Yeah, that was a harder call to make in that regard, as you have to choose one of the 2 targets, as they are either able to protect. Gyarados could just have been able to set up Trick Room if that was not the target intended by Joji. But Masayoshi correctly reading into that and knowing that, okay, I need to protect my Gyarados, keeping its health healthy. And Joji making a play just as well to make sure that if the Miraidon went for a Volt Switch, it has the ability to come back in later, making sure that the damage does get diminished by removing that Electric Train later on.
Yeah, and bringing the Incineroar now, not only do you go ahead and actually get the Intimidate dealt onto the Incineroar, not of course onto the Calyrex, as it does have the Clear Amulet, which definitely feels a bit more rare nowadays versus, let's say, for example, the leftovers that Joji has on his own Calyrex that is actually brought in right now. We've got a bit of a face-off, I would say, or at least a symmetrical, in parallel face-off. But this sort of does mean that the Incineroars have a lot more staying power and, might I say, firepower, because the Flare Blitz is available for both of them, and we do have the Sun still in play.
Yeah, Sun still in play. Incineroar loving its time, being a defensive Pokemon that has the access to Flare Blitz. But there we have one of the Incineroars immediately pivoting out to that Miraidon, making sure that that is able to come in, potentially take a Glacial Lance, take a Fake Out, and then able to Volt Switch quite strongly as the Flare Blitz is going out into that Calyrex. Still able to hang on there by just a sliver of health, making sure that it is able to retaliate with the higher horsepower and going for the 1-hit knockout with a critical hit on top as well.
Yeah, and I think that critical hit was huge, because we know for a fact that that might just fall within the range where it may not just pick up a KO. It's not guaranteed, but in retaliation, we see, because of the Flare Blitz from Joji's Incineroar, which did go down, it was just put within range to allow Joji's Calyrex to pick up the KO onto its counterpart, deal massive amount of damage onto the Miraidon, and also get back its attack drop from previously in order to just at least try to supplement the dropped damage output as this Incineroar comes back onto the field.
Yep, as it is 2 versus 2 right now. Lowered attack set onto the Rillaboom, lowered attack set onto the Calyrex. It is now at neutral while the Rillaboom is at -1. The Incineroar is feeling kind of good right now as the sun is still up. Flare Blitz is mighty in the air, being able to certainly deal a lot of damage to either the Rillaboom or the Calyrex in one of the following turns. So right now, Joji needs to carefully analyze what the best way to play is here, because you need to be able to get rid of this Incineroar eventually, as you only have Glacial Lance and Leech Seed as your semi-damaging move. But as long as the sun is up, this Incineroar is mighty scary. Fake Out coming out into the Incineroar, making sure that that is at least not moving for one turn.
Yeah, as we do see the Miraidon on the offensive, it needs to try to pick up a KO as quick as possible, and because the electric terrain is no longer on the field, it is unable to do so without a critical hit, as we've just seen on the Calyrex, not going for the Trick Room, purely going for damage, picks up the Miraidon, of course. You want to make sure that you do start racking those boosts, but most importantly, you get rid of that big offensive damage threat on the other side of the field, and now you're in a scenario where you got grass terrain on the field. If you can avoid this Incineroar picking you off, outpacing you essentially at this point, then you'll be able to be in a good enough spot. But we've just seen the interaction of the grass terrain recovery. Rillaboom went first, followed by Incineroar, followed by Calyrex. So we got entering a bit of a realm of mind games of, does the Calyrex protect or not?
Yeah, that is the one way you have to play right now, as the Calyrex is able to protect onto a potential Flare Blitz coming out, being able to KO that. But if you do not target into that slot, a Leech Seed could just as well come out while you take a lot of damage from the Incineroar, from the Glacial Lance, which is now at +1 and single target as well. So those are a lot of factors to keep in mind to know what is going on at this end stage.
Oh, but it seems Joji doesn't want to play by rolling any sort of dice at all. Goes for the protect with the Calyrex. Woodhammer into the Incineroar does about 15 to 20% of damage. Question is, Masayoshi, where do you target? You go for the Rillaboom because you read Joji and you pick up the KO onto the Rillaboom, completely knocking it out, and you have got the speed advantage. Your Incineroar's just been able to survive, and you are in such a good spot. However, we start seeing the amount of supplemented multi-layered recovery coming out from the Calyrex. It's starting to get very healthy, Shmon.
Yeah, it's very healthy, and the sun is gone, so let's take a look if this Flare Blitz is enough. And it is enough for the KO. Incineroar proving once again that it's not only a defensive Pokemon, but being able to take these necessary knockouts whenever it's needed. Whenever you call him, he'll be there.
Whether you like it or not, in the case of Joji, because, you know, why is this Incineroar being so oppressive against both of my Fire Wheat Pokemon? But yeah, we saw Masayoshi did a really good job being able to just corner that end game out, with the Incineroar being such a pivotal Pokemon in that situation. 2 versus 1, not what you normally do see, but you do see it every now and then. You kind of expect it, especially from a set like the Incineroars on Masayoshi being the Assault Vest. You're there to be able to sort of just handle the current situation, receive a lot of damage, get your pivots going, but when you need to try to take advantage of, let's say, your opponent's sun, you go for it. It's not the Flare Blitz.
It has that Flare Blitz, and powerful as it is, showcasing why it's being used. So I do believe one of the adaptations that Joji might be making is, instead of going for that Terra Fighter with the Koraidon, maybe opting to go for yet another option, maybe a more defensive Terra with its Calyrex, because Koraidon, of course, it is able to, with its Terra Fighter, absolutely decimate a lot of Pokemon. It didn't feel like it has been able to really showcase that in the previous game there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the fact that you're not going ahead and utilizing it as best as you can. But then again, I'm trying to think, which scenario would you go ahead and try to terrestrialize the Calyrex, because you don't want to be susceptible to the opposing Calyrex. But we're going to have to find out, as we do have the Game 2 leads that are available from both of our trainers, Miraidon and Urshifu, over on Masayoshi's side yet again. But we do have that adaptation of the Rillaboom and Calyrex Ice Rider over on Joji's.
Going into a different direction, giving yourself the option to go for a potential Trick Room there. You have your Rillaboom still on the field, making sure that this Miraidon is doing less damage at the very least. Again, they are able to go for that double protect and detect there, but then you are risking the one thing that can happen as well, Trick Room. Trick Room, reversing the speeds and giving Calyrex Ice a much needed opportunity to absolutely start snowballing, being able to throw Glacial Lance after Glacial Lance as well. So I don't think Masayoshi is going to be able to risk that right now, but we will have to see what they will decide to select here.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good call out as well. The fact that you're forcing a sort of what and if scenario for Masayoshi to accept. Whether you do take the fake out, sure, but you're going to have to allow this Trick Room to potentially get set up. And Masayoshi already going for the adaptation in hopes of being able to start slowing things down with that Incineroar being brought onto the field. You drop the attack damage output of both the Incineroar, the Rillaboom, apologies, and the Calyrex, but most importantly, you've got the fake out available in the subsequent turn. Miraidon trying to go on the offensive yet again. I wouldn't be surprised to see this being a Volt Switch, but most likely trying to catch out the Fake Out, which doesn't actually come out right now. Goes for the Electro Drift outside of terrain onto the Calyrex. We saw it left it with about 70 damage before it's got 28 hit points remaining because of a critical hit, but this horse has a lot more in the tank. He's able to survive quite handsomely. U-turn from the Rillaboom, on the other hand, goes into the Miraidon, gets a bit of chip damage dealt, but most importantly, you've got that adaptation of the Landorus. It's here in order to checkmate the Incineroar, and the Trick Room has been set up.
Yeah, Trick Room set up. Landorus is in it. Landorus is able to absolutely deal devastating damage to either of these Pokemon. Urshifu is not a Pokemon that loves to switch in into these Earth powers either. So, despite the critical hit, the Calyrex is still thriving right now, as it is at -1, but being able to still throw out your Glacial Lances or even go for potential Leech Seed or another switch out just as well gives Joji the upper hand right now, as they are able to take lead of this game.
Yeah, exactly, and even though the Incineroar will most likely outspeed the Landorus under Trick Room conditions, it's the fact that it's still there and able to not only threaten the Miraidon if it does either go for the Sandstare Storm or the Earth Power, depends on how greedy you want to be from Joji's side, or should I say hopeful in this scenario, but we're going to have to find out, as Joji does bring in the Incineroar, resets the attack drops from the Calyrex. Not only do you have the Intimidate onto the opposing Incineroar in of itself, you've most importantly got the Fake Out available in the subsequent turn. And clearly, Landorus, wanting to go on the defensive right now, felt a bit vulnerable, and for good reason, as the Incineroar did try to target it down. The Miraidon, though, trying to do the exact same. So, such an advanced play from Joji's side. Just wants to guarantee the board state is always in their favor.
Yeah, that was a very good call out there. Trying to make sure that you are able to keep your Landorus safe right now, as it is able to deal massive amount of damage to either of these targets right now. Another Power will decimate the Miraidon. Another Power will decimate the Incineroar. It might be able to survive thanks to that Assault Vest, but there's one of these two targets that might not even be able to move right now, because even Joji's Kaieda Incineroar is on the field and is able to fake out just as well. You can protect one more turn with that Miraidon even, but you then leaving your own Incineroar a little bit in a weakened state.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Incineroar going for the parting shot right now either, as like you mentioned, Miraidon going on the defensive. Fake Out though does go into the Incineroar on Masayoshi's side. Let's see what this will be. Is it going to be a Sandstare Storm, or is it going to be an Earth Power? So far we see the targeting onto the Miraidon. It is indeed the Sandstare. It does connect, but it does not pick up the KO, and this is the sort of risk that you take in terms of splitting the damage output dependent on it being a spread damage or a single target.
Yeah, and we do. I do wonder what the speed advantages were again with the Incineroars, because of course, if Joji's Incineroar is able to be slower, could potentially pick up a KO there with onto the Masayoshi's Incineroar, as the Landorus is just able to freely now click Earth Power, because you don't need to Sandstorm Storm, you don't need to risk anymore that you're potentially able to miss, because you are cornering your opponent in these last two given Trick Room turns as well.
Yeah, exactly that. We're going to have to see as both of our trainers are going ahead and contemplating their decisions. Clearly, Masayoshi does not want the Miraidon to be so vulnerable to this Landorus. Switches it out, brings the Calyrex, and is going to be able to tank the Earth Power, if not Sandsear Storm, quite handsomely, especially with residual recovery over time. Oh, the Flare Blitz would have potentially caught out that Calyrex if it targeted it down, but no, wanted to just guarantee the KO from that range. Joji's does move first, which is actually interesting to note under Trick Room conditions. Earth Power, however, single target, deals about half of the Calyrex's health, but most importantly, that grassy terrain recovery just helps just that tiny bit, even though obviously counterintuitive, as this was Joji's Pokemon that brought it.
Yep. And now, because there's one more turn of Trick Room, suddenly the rules have been a little bit reversed. Because now Calyrex is able to threaten with a Glacial Lance, and you can't just freely go for that Protect, because of course there's an Urshifu right now, and the Urshifu is a very scary Pokemon opposed to these two, because it is able to Surf, Jink, Strikes both of these Pokemon down to their last bit of HP.
Yeah, exactly. With the Unseen Fist, it's able to bypass Protect via its contact moves. So something that we're going to have to factor in right now, and will force Joji's hand to either go for Terrestrialization or force a switch out. And that's clearly what Masayoshi wants right now. He wants to try to force that scenario in order to be able to start steamrolling with this Calyrex in particular and sort of reverse the board state scenarios for themselves.
The switch in is that Calyrex opposed, trying to make sure that it is potentially able to survive a Glacial Lance even at this low of an HP. The Terra coming out onto this Landorus. Landorus, optimal timing right now, because it is able to now resist that Glacial Lance and is able to resist the Surging Strikes as well.
Yes, exactly. What a great type to Terrestrialize into, as no offensive move from this Urshifu, just going for the Detect, but the Calyrex is going full steam ahead, not picking up the KO though, onto, of course, if I'm not mistaken, it would have been a Calyrex in the back. What a great way to be able to resist that move and still survive, capitalize off of double-layered recovery via the grass terrain and the leftovers, and not drop a Pokemon slot, most importantly. And all of a sudden, we're in the scenario where Joji does have the speed advantage, at least in terms of the Landorus versus the Calyrex on the other side of the field. But this is still Urshifu, even with close combat, it could pack a punch, quite literally. So Joji may be tempted and incentivized to bring the Incineroar back in.
Yep, because you are now suddenly afraid of a close combat that can come out from this Urshifu. Urshifu is still on its Focus Sash, so being able to freely go for any move that it wants right now. Unfortunately, Joji did miss a Sandsear Storm onto the Ice Rider in the previous turn, but honestly, believing in that move again, because they are just clicking it again, which is honestly impressive to say the least. Let's see what the speed interaction here is, because that is also going to be quite important.
Oh, most definitely, as the Incineroar is brought in order to be able to negate any higher damage output of a close combat potential into the Landorus slot. But no, just a slow focus of the Surging Strikes into the Incineroar. It's put within range of a third hit. It does get KO'd, and all of a sudden the Incineroar, which has been such a thorn in Masayoshi's side, is finally out of this game. 3 versus 3 scenario. We've got the Calyrex now looking to make a move, and it seems like it's just it's just going to be able to survive the Sandsear Storm. The Urshifu, however, does not get hit by it, retains its Focus Sash. It is smooth grooving left, right, and center. Not what Joji is wanting to see at all. And of course, we do see that Joji, because of the Water Terror type, it is able to survive the onslaught of a Glacial Lance.
Yeah, now Rillaboom on the field, giving that fake out, much needed fake out pressure yet again. But the Urshifu still Sash unbroken, so this Urshifu is still able to deal a lot of damage we've had the Intimidate drop, at least on the Urshifu, so making sure that the close combats will do less. But as long as you are not really able to diminish the power that is Urshifu, because this is a close range to see where the Urshifu should or shouldn't be able to kill this Landorus, because you are Terra Water, you are terribly afraid of that Miraidon in the back just as well.
I know, it's so tough because you're leaning into seeing the most profit that you could get is via Sansear Storm, so I don't disagree with Joji going for that move. It's just unfortunately how the dice roll sometimes. You got to be able to maybe just wager on whether it's a bit more safer going for the Earth Power in order to reach at least a board state that's a bit more preferable for yourself, rather than not and playing it safe and trying to go split down the middle. Detect from the Urshifu will allow itself to retain the Focus Sash, but Sansear Storm does connect on the Calyrex. It will finally be going down. This game is definitely not over, but guess what? We are approaching the end of it. Landorus and Calyrex currently on the field for Joji. 3 versus 2 scenario, and most importantly, Joji has been able to safeguard the Rillaboom in the back in order to be able to revert from the electric terrain that's just been introduced back into the grassy.
Yeah, this is still a scary turn to go up against, because as long as the Miraidon is on the field, the Miraidon is able to protect from a potential fake out later from this Rillaboom. But it will be a little bit tight here to see, as we see the Calyrex switching out to the Rillaboom, making sure that at least the Miraidon is lowering its attack.
Yeah, so we're going to have to see, though, which targeting choice is Masayoshi going to make for, and is Joji able to catch them out, hoping for the Electro-type move going into the Landorus, and no close combat focus into it. It seems like the Draco Meteor goes onto the Rillaboom, picks up the KO with the critical hit, absolutely getting rid of it. My lord, this is absolutely game-changing. That Pokemon surely would have been able to stay on the field. So unfortunate. Close combat does pick up the Landorus, and this is an absolute sweep from Masayoshi. Unfortunate for Joji, leaving him to the final remaining Pokemon, the Calyrex.
Yeah, that is very tough in that scenario. If the Rillaboom was able to survive, it still had the option to go for a fake out on either of these targets and being able to set up the Trick Room, because both targets would have been slower. But now there's only this lone Calyrex Ice here on the field versus these two faster targets. Absolutely masterful match, to say the least. It was exploding damage-wise. Joji trying to honestly scramble around and trying to find the right options here to do, but time and time again, Masayoshi kept on with his onslaught. This Miraidon, despite the grassy terrain being up, being able to do that much damage. And then, of course, a lucky crit can happen from time to time, but that sealed the deal in that regard.
It did, and in the end of the day, you gotta try to approach your win condition as much as possible. It's essentially like sort of a branch timeline scenario where you need to make sure that you progress further and further towards your main goal. Obviously, the correct play there was always to try to whittle down the Rillaboom. If you can pick up a crit, sure, that would be fantastic. And clearly, game winning, as we saw from Masayoshi. But then you just need to be able to pin yourself up for success. Joji had, let's be real, okay? Joji had a couple, I would say, a few very unfortunate scenarios happen to them. But in all honesty, I've been there when it comes to Sansear Storms. You cannot rely on them. You just can't. And that's why I just find myself, I have to run Rain, because I just can't trust them. Because there's so much profit and gain you could get from them, where it makes sense for you to always click it. Why would you never not click it? But it's just about whether the game can reward you or not, right? For your courage and going for it. And that is just so unfortunate. Earth Power, if you're able to at least pick off the Focus Sash and break it on the Urshifu, it would have allowed yourself a bit more of staying power, especially with the threat of the Rillaboom. But unfortunately, Joji just wasn't able to capitalize and reach off that point, because he just kept on being met by unfortunate situations. But obviously, Masayoshi played as a master. Honestly, in all completeness.
No, there were no words to describe the unfortunateness about what happened. Of course, the critical hits, the misses, But that is, of course, part of Pokemon. That is, sometimes you need to rely on these moves. Sandsear Storm is a very powerful move that is able to absolutely win you games if you're able to just connect all of them. But unfortunately, always connecting is not always in the cards or in this game on the card. With, like, cards as in like in the game. But yeah, the adaptation was just very well met because the Urshifu being able to keep its sash, the knowing that the Landorus will probably be a slower variant as well, protecting in the last turn, in the final turn of that Trick Room, making sure that Urshifu stayed safe as well was very well like seen by Masayoshi, trying to acknowledge that that is a very real possibility that can happen.
Yeah, and it's just being able to put yourself to the point where you're outside of Trick Room, or at least you start slowing Trick Room down as much as possible. You get the really cool cycling in and whatnot. So that was all great to see, but clearly Joji was able to position themselves to a point where, like we're saying at the start of game 2, they identified that they've got this sort of pin where they force a board state advantage in their favor, where you've got the Fake Out, you've got the Rillaboom with the Grass Terrain that nullifies the Electric Terrain from the Miraidon. Urshifu is the same lead. You've got Fake Out, but then you've got the Trick Room set up, and then you've got so much more momentum to play with. It's just the fact that Masayoshi was able to match that with some really good switch outs. Obviously, there were cases of the unfortunate RNG with the Sandsear Storm misses, but you're still at the point where you're trying to set yourself up for success outside of Trick Room. And that's sort of what we saw develop over time. But yes, huge congrats to Masayoshi Kuroo, who has made it into Top Cut in what was such an important and fantastic fashion. Unfortunate for Joji Kaieda, of course, but, you know, huge commiserations, but absolute champ in how they've been playing and the team they've brought as well.
No, absolutely. That is exactly as you said. But now we have concluded this round, meaning that we are going into the following round. We have concluded our last 2 rounds of Swiss, meaning next up is Top Cut. The final players will be fighting for in this final bracket, where they will throw everything they have to try and get even deeper and then potentially to that world title. Now you can take a little break, get some refreshments, check out the main stream, and then we hope that you return and enjoy looking at this side stream just as well. So we'll be back soon with our Top Cut.